everyone. My name is Ciera Harris. I am the author at Ciera Harris Teaching, and we are ready for another episode in Adventures of Comprehension. And tonight I've got a great topic for us. We're going to be talking all about how to plan effective mini lessons. So when I say the word mini lesson, I don't just mean a short lesson. A mini lesson actually has a formula that you will use to follow that, one, helps keep it mini, and two, helps make sure that you hit all of the important parts of that lesson before you move on to whatever you're doing afterwards. So I thought we would start out with some basics, and this is something that you may or may not already know, might be a good refresher, I don't know. But I want to talk to you about the parts of a mini lesson. There are 5 different parts. The first part is your connection. When you start out your lesson, you want to make sure that you are connecting what you are about to talk about to your students. Okay, you're trying to hook them in, you're trying to make it relevant to them. You want to give them a good connection or a good hook. So something simple as saying, like, yesterday we da 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 da. So you're connecting it to what you did yesterday. And it can be done in 1 to 2 sentences. We're talking 15 to 30 seconds max. So that's the first part of a mini lesson. The second is your teaching point. So what are you there to talk about today? Your teaching point, again, can be done in 15 to 30 seconds. Tell them what they're learning. Today, I want to teach you readers that blank. You've got your connection, you've got your teaching point. Both can be done in less than 60 seconds, and we're almost halfway through. Your third part is your teaching, your modeling. You are doing the teaching for your students. You're showing them what is going on inside your brain while you're reading in order to meet the teaching point. Okay, so maybe you're doing this through analyzing a short paragraph. Maybe you're doing this through analyzing a section of a mentor text. Okay, maybe you're doing this by filling out a graphic organizer. You're going to spend the majority of your whole mini lesson in this part because you want to make sure that you're giving them everything that they need in order to be successful trying this later when they are doing independent work. So the teaching point is all about you, the teacher. It is not the time for students to volunteer or to give their own opinion or for them to try it. They should be sitting on that carpet with you or in their desk or wherever you have them for your mini lesson. They should be listening intently to everything you have to say because they should know that they won't be successful later if they don't listen now. So that's part number 3. Part number 4 is practice. So now you've stopped your model and now you are allowing students to practice with you. This is when students get to talk. Now it's their turn, okay? So maybe we've had like 6 or 7 minutes go by of our mini lesson, and so now they're allowed to talk. Now we can explain what we learned. Now we can go a little bit more into detail and try out different scenarios. They can talk it out with each other. They can talk it out with you. You want to make sure that during this part you engage them. This is the engagement section, right? You want to have them turn to their partner. You want to put in some motions, some body movements to allow them to engage with the conversation of what you're having. But this is their time to show you, do they understand what you just modeled? Okay, so that is the 4th section. The 5th and final section is, again, very, very short, just like the first 2, but it's link. You want to link what you are just practiced to what they're about to go and do, okay? And it's as simple as saying, boys and girls, remember that anytime you da-da-da-da-da, you need to da-da-da-da-da. So, when you are thinking about mini lessons, there's a few different characteristics that I always try to keep in mind. We already spoke briefly about the fact that mini lessons are short. The time of your mini lesson should reflect 2 things. 1, it should reflect the age of your students. If you have younger students with lower attention spans, then the time you spend on a mini lesson should probably be lower, right? The other really important thing about the timing of your mini lesson is the content. If you are teaching a kind of a more of a heavy lift type content in your mini lesson, it's going to take a little longer to get through it, right? They're not going to be successful in the end if the heavy lifting is, or if the lifting is heavy and the time spent is super short, that they just didn't get it. They didn't get it through your model, and they didn't get it through the practice. Another great tip for when you're thinking about mini lessons is keep your skill focused. The more focused you can get your mini lesson, the better your mini lesson is going to turn out to be, because you want it to be actionable for your students. Basically, what's happening here is you have an end result. You want your students to be able to do A, so you need to practice A and you need to model A, right? It needs to all completely align, and it needs to be something very bite-sized and actionable that your students can take from your mini lesson and easily apply to their reading. Okay, so keep them short, keep them focused, keep them practical, so those actionable steps. And then also think about the application. You want to make sure that you're thinking, how are the students going to apply this information in their independent reading? Okay, they should be able to see, meaning the students should be able to see, okay, I can do this. I can do this when I read. And if they can't, then the mini lesson is going to get lost in translation. Okay. And that works too, or this step too works for when you're doing writing mini lessons as well. But let's talk a little bit about some ways that you can try to keep your mini lessons short. First one, a timer is your best friend. I know it's weird, and I know it's hard to get into the habit of remembering to set the timer. But guess what? You have 20 to 25 little helpers right there in front of you. I guarantee you one of them will remind you. If you say, boys and girls, Mrs. Harris is having a very hard time going over our time when it comes to our mini lessons. We have so much other stuff to get to, and I have a hard time being quiet. Can you help me with something? I need you to remind me. Anytime we sit down for our reading mini lesson, remind me to start my timer. Can you do that for me? Guess what? You will be so upset that you told them to remind you, because they will always remind you, right? Maybe not for the whole 15 minutes. Give yourself time to wrap things up. So maybe if you want to, your goal is 15 minutes. I want to make sure I'm done with my mini lesson in 15 minutes, then set your timer for 10. That gives you a 5-minute cushion to know, like, I got to get through the most important piece of this and wrap this up so we can keep going. Another thing to help when it comes to timing is to make sure you have everything planned out. If I have my mini lesson planned out to a T, and I know that in 15 minutes I've got to do and say these 5 things, then I'm going to know. It's like a race to the finish line. And if I get that aha moment in my mind and I'm like, man, I got to share this, but I know this is sitting in front of me, it's sitting on my clipboard right here, I will not be veering off. I will not be having those side conversations. And again, if a student raises their hand and it's something that just isn't quite applicable, I know that I'm going to say to that student, that's a great question. Will you see me when we're done with our mini lesson? Boom, and you keep going. Another great tip for timing is your anchor charts. Anchor charts are perfect, as you know, for mini lessons, but you want to make sure that true anchor charts are interactive with students. So the students need to have some say in what goes on that anchor chart. Otherwise, it's just called a poster. So when it comes to anchor charts, what the trick or tip here is have part of your anchor chart done. Okay? Have the title written on there. If you have a tip or two that you want or have to write that on there. Have your cute picture drawn. Whatever you have on there, do that. But make sure that you're not putting everything on it ahead of time. You want your students to be able to interact with that anchor chart. But if you have everything else done ahead of time, you're not having to do all that in the moment, then of course it saves you time. So have your anchor charts ready to go. Okay. Another great tip for timing is to read whatever you're reading in your mini lesson, read it ahead of time. Okay. A lot of times, I would say in my reading mini lessons, 80% 80 to 85% of my mini lessons include some sort of mentor text, right? As I know a lot of ours do. So, do I have time to read that mentor text and do all 5 parts of my mini lesson? Absolutely not. Not in 15 minutes. Uh-uh. So, how do we combat that? Because mentor texts really are the best way to showcase reading skills and strategies. We need to read them ahead of time. It is so life-saving. It is the best mini lesson tip I probably will give you today. Read your books ahead of time. So in my mind, when I'm reading or when I'm like planning out things for the week, and I know that I want to read some books for fun, and then I also know that I'm going to be using mentor text for instructional purposes. What I do is I try to go back through all of the books that we have recently read and use one of those. A great way to do this is keep a basket, a very special basket in your classroom. You can make a little sign that says books we've read together. And every time you read a book for fun, put that book in that basket, okay? And maybe keep it there for a few weeks, and then you can put it back on your shelf or wherever it really belongs. But then when you're planning your mini lessons and you need a good mentor text that you know your students have read recently, go to the basket. And then you can go through and go, oh, this is a great text for making inferences, because I know when we were reading it out loud 2 weeks ago, we were making all kinds of inferences together. This will be perfect. And then when you get to your mini lesson, you can say, boys and girls, do you remember reading this with me a few weeks ago? And they're going to get so excited, especially your lower readers, because they've already kind of done all the heavy lifting as far as comprehension goes. And they're going to be able to focus more with you on the teaching point. It's fantastic. So use books that you've already read, okay? Hey everyone, so sorry to interrupt, but I want to make sure that you are loving the content coming from Ciera Harris Teaching on YouTube. So make sure if you are loving this to subscribe and also like and comment below. I would love to hear from you. We're kind of gearing into like the next little section that I wanted to talk about. So books, right? Using books, using mentor text as a part of your mini lesson. It's a great strategy, but sometimes those books are so long that it's difficult to do, right? Even if we pre-read them, even if we read the book a few weeks ago and I'm being intentional and I'm wanting to use the book now for my mini lesson, the book is still quite long. Like, how can I combat the length of this picture book and be able to really utilize it in my mini lesson? So obviously we talked about what I just mentioned, which is making sure to read the book ahead of time, right? Read it at a different time. If it's been too long since you've read it, maybe you read it as a class like a month or two ago, and you know it's going to be a great book, then be purposeful about reading it the day before for fun. So you can kind of, tweak things like that as well. Like, I'm going to read this book today for fun, and tomorrow we're going to have a mini lesson on it. Because in your schedule, you already have, or you should have, a lot of time to read to your children, read to your students. But that doesn't mean we can't be very intentional about the books we're picking to read when it comes to helping ourselves later with our mini lessons, okay? So read it at a different time. Read it ahead of time. Also, in your mini lessons, you could take your book that you found that is absolutely fabulous for whatever teaching point and read it across a few days. No one says that you have to read or use the whole book in your mini lesson. You want to utilize the whole book because it is jam-packed with great information and you want to practice the skill throughout the whole book. Great, do that. But chunk your book over 5 different days. You're going to read this section on Monday, this section on Tuesday, this section, etc. And then you can use that section in your mini lesson on each day. So by the end of the week, you've read the whole book. By the end of the week, you've done 5 unique mini lessons, all targeted on that one very specific skill. And you were able to utilize this awesome mentor text that you found. So kind of chunk it into days and read it across time. Okay, another great thing to do is to make sure you're using wordless picture books. Wordless picture books are fantastic for mini lessons, okay? Now, you still have to read the book, okay? Students still have to get the picture and get the gist. However, you can do this a lot more quickly and obviously without reading the words and showcasing reading skills and strategies with wordless picture books than you can the other ones in your short amount of time that you have. Okay, so I want to end today with talking about mini lessons with some just really big overall tips for you. And I've got a few of them. So the first one is to make sure that you have an established space, a comfortable space with materials ready to go. Your students should know that when you say it's time for our reading mini lesson, they should know where that is, where that's located, what the expectations are. You should have your materials ready to go, and it should be a seamless transition into the lesson and out of the lesson. If those things are not in place, then it's going to take away time from your actual mini lesson. If you're having to go over expectations and tell students where to go, and you're having to gather materials from your desk and from the library, and get the Anchor chart paper and the markers, and everything should be in one spot. So get yourself organized. I didn't mean it like I said it. Get organized when it comes to mini lessons, and you're going to find that works really well in your favor, okay? Also, if you need to, have some set spots assigned for students. This is a great classroom management tip overall when it comes to, like, if you're coming to the carpet, have assigned spots. And the great thing about this when it works for mini lessons is you can then assign talking partners. If the students are always coming to the carpet and they're doing great with that and they're just kind of sitting anywhere they want, that's fine. But you want to make sure that your students are talking to each other during your mini lesson, during that engagement part, right? And if they're talking to each other with new people each time, you're going to find that you're always like, well, make a group of 3 here. No, you guys, don't leave him out. Make a group of 3, right? That happens a lot. So the way to combat that is to have assigned spots and have assigned partners. And you can switch it up every few weeks. Give them a new spot, give them a new partner. It doesn't mean that they're always going to have to talk to the same people. But when it comes to timing and having to do this and make sure that we are done on time, that is something that can absolutely save your sanity. All right? Another tip, remember to model. Now, I know I said the word model way back at the beginning of this video, but I'm going to say it again. The very most important thing about your mini lesson, if you want your students to be successful and to use that strategy, they need to see you doing it as a reader. That means that you are giving them a peek inside your brain, right? It is like they can hear you thinking. They can hear everything going on in your mind when you are reading. They know what questions you're asking yourself. They know what mistakes you are making and how you are going to combat those and get through them. They know what thoughts you are having, everything from beginning till end when it comes to that reading strategy. So modeling is so important. One thing, mini lessons. Mini lessons fit in to any kind of schedule. They are not just for workshop type models, okay? I was never a workshop girl. Writer's workshop I did the last few years in the classroom. Reader's workshop I never did. I am a gradual release model teacher, and I am that to the core because I've seen it work for all students. Mini lessons can work with that too, okay? So if you think about your mini lesson pieces and your gradual release pieces, gradual release is the I do, we do, you do. So we have I do, that's obviously the teaching, right, in the mini lesson. Then we have the we do, that's clearly the engagement of the mini lesson. And then the you do, well, that's whatever you're having them do independently after you do your mini lesson. So mini lessons work with all different types of lesson structures, not just workshop models. Mini lessons, here's the next tip, mini lessons should be scaffolded across time. So when you're planning out your mini lessons, you want to make sure that you're planning them out across time rather than one at a time. I don't know what kind of a planner you are, but I highly encourage you to make sure, even if it's just for your reading mini lessons, make sure that you are not planning them one lesson at a time. you have got to see where you're going with everything. You need to kind of scope and sequence it out yourself to know and to be able to get those bite-sized chunks in. If I'm planning one mini lesson at a time, I'm going to get lost. My students can get lost. The students aren't going to get out of it. We're going to end up getting frustrated more easily. We're going to have too big of pieces to chew when it comes to our actual focus of the lesson. There's a lot of potential issues there. So do me a favor and make sure that you are actually planning out your mini lessons at least a week at a time, maybe sometimes 2 weeks, depending on how long you're focusing on that one skill. Okay. Keep your mini lessons interactive. We know that fourth section or fourth piece of a mini lesson is the engagement piece. The word engagement is there for a reason. They have got to get involved. Let them turn and talk. Use body movements. Do stop and jots. So keep Post-it notes on hand. My students had Post-it notes in their desk, and when we did mini lessons, they knew to bring them with them. All right, mini lessons in pencil was an expectation in my carpet area. They came with them. If they didn't have them, they lost them. They grabbed from an extra pile and they came with them. That was an expectation because they knew they were going to be encouraged and required to write, to think, to draw, whatever it may be in that moment, but they were going to be engaged with the lesson with me at some point. Writing on the anchor chart is another way to get them engaged. Again, we talked about that earlier. Keeping that anchor chart space open for student interaction. So allowing them to go up and place Post-it-notes, allowing them to go up and write answers, having them give you answers and you write them on. If you need to do something more quick, that's fine too. But make sure that you are focusing on engagement during the engagement part of the mini lesson. Mini lessons should not be scripted, okay? And they also need to be planned by you, not your curriculum. And I'm going to say that again. Mini lessons should be planned by you and not the curriculum. Why? Mini lessons are a complete and total reflection of your readers, plural. What your readers need is how you plan your mini lessons. Okay, so if the curriculum is saying that you're going to be doing this mini lesson and you know that your students don't need that and they need something else and you have to do it anyway, why? Okay, you are there for your students, period. End of discussion. Make sure that your mini lessons are planned by you because you know your readers, okay? If you need suggestions and ideas on how and what to put in your mini lesson, that's fine. But what you teach in your mini lesson as far as what specific skills your students need, and that's what you put in your mini lesson, that's what comes from you. Okay, so yes, you can have scope and sequences for suggestions, but you need to go off your readers. You need to feed off them and give them what they need at the time they need it. That's how they're going to grow faster. Okay. All right, and my final tip, because we've talked a lot today, is to make sure to teach the reader, not the book. Unfortunately, way too many times I will see mini lessons where a teacher is using a mentor text, okay, and they're doing a great job. Maybe they even model, but then the engagement section turns into a Q&A about the book itself. Make sure, please, that you are not teaching the book, that you are teaching the reader a strategy that they will then use to be able to comprehend whatever book is in his or her hands, okay? So keep your reader at the heart of your mini lesson, and you can't go wrong. Absolutely can't. All right, so don't forget to download your freebie tonight if you want it. I'm going to put the link in the description of the video as well in the comments below. That way you can grab this for free. And if you have any questions about mini lessons, I'm absolutely happy to help. Just drop me a comment below and I will respond to those individually to help you out if I have the answers, of course. Thank you so much, guys.